All right, welcome back to Sunrise Day. Well, yes, you heard the president speaking about steps and how the need to improve the economy with that presidential committee on the national economy. So we'll take a look at some of what he said, proffering solutions and what and how can or should all of these play out. We've got two gentlemen joining us this morning to weigh in on that subject matter. Well, here in the studio is Dr. Muda Ayorinde, who is a pro-chancellor, Achievers University, or in Ondo State. He's a former member of the House of Reps. While he was there, he was the chairman, House Committee on Economic Recession. He's a fellow, Chartered Institute of Bankers. He's an associate professor of international banking and finance law, Faculty of Law, Nasarawa State University. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, then we also will have Dr. Muda Yusuf, who is a former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He will join us virtually. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us as well today on the program.
Good morning, Chamberlain. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, Dr. Ayorinde, let's start with you. I mean, listen to what the president said. Yes, everybody, lots of people, I don't know who doesn't want to see the economy work and grow. We all want that solution. But highlighting several issues there, sometimes you wonder, oh dear, how will they approach this? And towards the end of that report, my colleague did speak about how the president thinks that, look, the real challenge will be resolving the internal scenarios, which he thinks will be key to ensuring that we actually take off. But I know there's been several talks, suggestions, committees concerning how we need to move forward. But if you go anchor on, start off on this, how do you see all this playing out?
Well, Chamberlain, and good morning, Nigerians. The EU is beyond lamentation. We must, everybody must be concerned. I also sympathize with our president that is concerned. Government itself being, the purpose being welfare and the security of its people. And if the economy is not doing well, if millions of people are suffering, and I don't want to use the word poverty capital of the world, these are frightening issues. And those of us who go to the market, those who have wives, we know what prices of rice, gari, and staple food is in the market. Yes, the statistics is showing a growth in the economic indexes. But what about when you share it, then you look at per capita income, when you look at the number, the indices, the erudite scholar at the other side, Muda, will tell you that even those who are the manufacturing side will tell you that the situation is alarming. It's alarming. You see the price of diesel, you see the interest rate in lending in the banks. Is it those who are in the employment who are retrenching because they cannot meet? So the situation is chaotic. So if the president is worried, is genuinely worried, and my worry, my personal worry as somebody who had been in the banking industry or have been in the parliament is, for how long are we going to be monitoring OPEC prices on crude oil? For how long are we going to depend, rise or fall with crude oil? Saboteurs are now taking their toll on the oil, on the only monopolitic nature of our economy. When are we going to look at other sides? Until we are able to identify some other areas where we have the strength to grow the economy. And we are no longer 100% dependent on this crude oil. Until then, we are not serious. Lamentation will not do it. Let me before you come, let me just give one example. As chairman of House Committee Ad hoc Economic on Recession that time, I led my members to companies in Lagos that have closed shop, and one was very pathetic, Dunlop. Do you know the number of vehicles on the road? If we cannot produce cars, can't we produce tires? Don't we have rubber plantations in the forest that we can say, okay, we are no longer importing tires? Why should the two tire manufacturing companies in Nigeria collapse, and we are looking at it? What do we have to do to ensure that, okay, if we are importing cars, we want to produce the tires? Take that one from foreign exchange. It has effect. Identify a few like that. beyond crude oil. Identify about 20 items that we have economic advantage over, that this country will produce because of our resources. You will see the effect on the foreign exchange because there will be no pressure to bring such items to this country. So as we lament, we must also sit down and think about factors that have led to this, not to just one, not just focusing only on crude oil, the price is rising, the price is falling. What about if the crude oil just dry up? Are we not going to exist as a country?
All right, let me bring in Mr. Yusuf on this one. I mean, you know, you have the Minister of Finance, you have the CBN governor, you have the National Economic Council, you have the economic management team. I think they'll replace it and come up with another advisory team. So you have several groups of people who are supposed to be the managers of the economy. Then now you have this one. So, you know, looking through all of this, what is it or where is it that, how come these things, or with all of these teams that we have, we still can't seem to get it right? Hence the reason why the president says he is indeed worried about this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chamberlain. Well, at first I was a bit confused when I learned about this committee. And just as you said, we have had the economic management team, which was chaired by the vice president. I remember at that time, I was still at the LCCI. We used to have quarterly interaction with the vice president and some of the key economic ministries. Then that was dissolved in a way, or as it were. Then we had the Presidential Economic Advisory Council, chaired by Dr. Doyin Salami, and with quite a number of highly respected members, including Bismarck Riwani, Charles Soludo, Professor Lu, and the rest of them, which was quite a formidable team. Then, just as you said, we also have the National Economic Council, chaired by the vice president, although populated mainly by the governors. So when you have all of this, I think my worry is that I'm not sure that we are short of ideas as to what exactly we should do. I think the problem is connecting those reports or recommendations of these committees to actual implementation or the political will to adopt and implement those recommendations. That, for me, I think is a major issue. We need to have that connection. But the difference between this and what has happened before is that this committee, the presidential, this new presidential committee, is now chaired by the president himself. Maybe that will make a difference. And the president made a very profound statement. He said we need to attract and retain investors, and that we need to deal with the challenge of policy predictability and policy coherence. Those are very profound statements. And I'm happy that this is coming up, and I'm also hoping that beyond just talking about it, we do something concrete about it. Because these are basically the issues that we have been facing. If you talk about the economy today, there are 4 major headwinds that you may want to identify, which of course the president alluded to. You have the oil theft and the attacks on oil installations, which has created a whole problem, a whole set of problems in that sector. And that sector is a very strategic sector for the economy, both from the point of revenue and from the point of view of foreign exchange earnings. We had the fuel subsidy problem and the associated macroeconomic challenges, because the fuel subsidy thing has created a whole lot of macroeconomic problems, like the issue of debt, issue of high deficit, issues of massive corruption and all of that. Then we have the foreign exchange policy problem. The president did say that some problems we have are external, some problems we have are domestic to us. The foreign exchange policy problem is a domestic problem. Unfortunately, it was not listed by the president himself. It was not recognized as one of the major problems that you have in the economy. Because the foreign exchange policy environment has created a whole lot of distortions, dislocations in the economy. That, I think, as they progress, it will be listed, will be a major item on the agenda of the committee. Then we have the problem of insecurity. Those are the 4 critical issues I think we should be addressing if you really want to move the needle as far as the economy is concerned. Because as we speak, the economy is at a tipping point, and something needs to be done very urgently. We talked about coherence. That is very important because over time we have seen different agencies of government going in different directions. We have been talking about the issue of policy coordination. You know, what we have had over time are silos of people trying to be territorial in their disposition. So perhaps now that the president himself is sitting at the head of this committee, maybe you can see some level of coordination and coherence in the way the economy is managed.
Well, let me take this to Dr. Ayorinde in our Abuja studio. Dr. Yusuf has talked about some of the major issues, the composition, the headwinds, what we need to be focusing on. Perhaps the president is the head such that this can have maybe more bite. There'll be reduced bottlenecks and other bureaucracies that come into play. But we'll talk about the composition and all of that. But I'd like to maybe learn from some of the experience you have, being in that committee on recession, the ad hoc committee at that time. Nigeria just recovered from a recession post-COVID-19 and all of that. And now we have this committee, which some are still wondering what will be different. But if we can learn from our previous experience, maybe learn from our mistakes, learn from things we did right, looking at what we're faced with right now and casting our minds back to the recession period, at least that period, and then post-recession. What do you think we can pick from then that we can at least put into use now and maybe get out of this even faster?
Thank you, my brother. Honestly, until we look into that report again, after 1 year of going around the country, we submitted a report to Parliament about our findings concerning the causes of the economic recession then. And we made useful recommendations. I'm not sure it went beyond the Parliament. If you have a country of our population, currently over 200 million, and there is no policy on industrialization, beyond, because the first most important thing we saw, 17 edX at that time, was that, look, this country, industries are turning to churches. Major industries, whether Kaduna, Port Harcourt, we are now having assembly of worshippers. Would these people give employment? As much as we want to worship God, would these assemblies give employment beyond the gateman and perhaps those who sweep the churches? So we are thinking that if you look back at the report of the Parliament on Ajaokuta steel mill, which has been moribund, which worth over $5 billion when it was put in place. I learned about 64 kilometers of roads are tied there, including housing estates, gathering dust. And where is an industrialized economy without steel? I've made an example of a tire, that if we cannot manufacture motor vehicles in this country, don't we have economic advantage of producing tires? And just like Mr. Muda has said, all these challenges we are talking about, crude oil. If I were God, though everybody are not God, let the crude oil dry up. We'll be wise. Singapore has no drop of crude oil and has the largest refinery in the world. So how do you explain that? A country that doesn't have crude oil put in place a refinery, and our crude oil will find its way to be refined. We now imported them back. Thank God, the president has seen the challenges we are facing, as he's now the chairman of this committee. if there is no coherence, there is no policy will, political will to implement some of the recommendations, when the president becomes, it's not how far, but it is how well. This last few months that the president has to answer Mr. President and Commander-in-Chief, let the president say, now I'm the chairman. Even if you pick just two items that you know that will have a lasting impression, of the economy of this country, beyond the crude oil. Let us address the issue of, one, the saboteurs. The government has the political will, have the machinery, have the army, have the Air Force, Navy to stop the saboteurs. If this one is stopped and we can produce at our own, at the normal capacity, then whatever we gain there should not be lost into corruption. We have recovered a lot of loot here and there. I don't want to mention names. What has happened to it? Looting the recovery. So if we are able to deal with the issue of insecurity, because where there is no security, there cannot be economy. Even in the secondary school. If there is so much insecurity, parents will withdraw their children from that school will collapse. That's a small example. So a country where the security is a serious problem, where saboteurs have taken over our main source of lubricating the economy, which is the crude oil, where interest rate is at high point, where factories are closing down, where a lot of graduates have no access to employment. And we are now encouraging them to go. You have a graduate who have served, studied economics, you go back to sewing. I mean, if I wanted to be a tailor, perhaps after secondary school, you would have gone to fashion design and start sewing fantastically.
Okay, Dr. Ayorinde,
that cannot be the mission.
Quite a number of issues you have raised. I mean, you've talked about security, which is a major one, especially when it comes to oil theft. You've talked about employment, industrialization, and all of that. Those are areas you think at least we should focus on for now. If we can get results within the few months left, then perhaps we can see quicker turnarounds. Let me bounce this off Dr. Yusuf, because some of these areas clearly the private sector plays a huge role in all of this. And Dr. Yusuf, I have looked through the composition of this committee, this latest committee, and I realized that, yes, it is chaired by the president, you have the vice president, you have the Nigeria Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, you have the Minister of Budget, National Planning, essentially all government representatives. You have representation from that, interestingly, that Economic Advisory Council as well. Do you think the composition is what it ought to be, seeing the challenges we're faced with? Do you think it is heavy on government, or perhaps this is the way it should be?
Well, I agree with you. It is heavy on government. But the issue is that the problems that the private sector is facing is very well known. You don't even need a private sector person to be on that panel for you to know what the problems are. They are very obvious. Look at the challenge of inflation and the rate at which prices have been galloping. The prof in the studio had alluded to that. Even though we're talking about inflation rate of 19.6%, if you look critically at it and look at what the basket of goods that the average Nigerian is consuming, we are talking about inflation of well over 50% over the last 1 year. Some prices have doubled, some have tripled. And this is have far-reaching implications for the welfare of the people and also for the prosperity of businesses. That is one. Secondly, we have a major crisis with our foreign exchange environment. I mean, that is also very obvious. You don't need a private sector person to sit on that committee to tell you that. I mean, look at how the exchange rate has been fluctuating. I'm happy the president talked about the fact that things are very volatile. There's so much unpredictability in the economy. If you talk about volatility in the economy today, it's around issues of inflation and issues of foreign exchange. It's a policy problem. You see, it's not the private sector that makes the policy, it is government. So between the president, the finance minister, the CBN the governor, they have to sort this matter out. Look at the embarrassment we are facing in our foreign exchange environment. Look at what is happening to the airlines. How many countries in the world are experiencing that kind of thing? That airlines are here, they sold their ticket, they can't take their money out. Look at what is happening to foreign direct investors. Many of them cannot repatriate their dividend or profit. It's a policy problem. Look at portfolio investors. How many of them are coming in? Those who are here are stuck. They can't repatriate their money. And yet, the president also said it. We need to attract investors. We need to retain investors. It's a policy problem.
Due for a break in about a minute. Pardon me, but, you know, staying on that foreign exchange, because it's a big deal now. The president talked about it. He mentioned foreign exchange, but he linked it to, you know, the high price of crude oil in the international market. Sadly, we're not doing as much as we ought to. We're doing less than 1 million barrels per day, just less than half of the OPEC quota and all of that. So he tied the foreign exchange, perhaps the challenges we're seeing in foreign exchange, to our output in terms of crude and how much we can sell. Even though the prices are high, we're faced with, you know, saboteurs and all of that. Do you think that's enough solution to the foreign exchange challenge in terms of policy direction?
Certainly not. And this is what I was saying. Even those who wrote the president's speech did not adequately address the foreign exchange problem. The policy problem is #1 problem because investors are not coming in. If you have a crisis with a price, because the exchange rate is a price, you have issues on the demand side, you have issues on the supply side. The demand side, yes, there's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure again because of the policy, because if you have a premium of over 200 naira on a dollar between the official window and the parallel market window, why would there not be heavy pressure on the official window?
Yusuf.
We have created a paradise for people who are brokers in the foreign exchange market.
Yes. On the one hand, just as you have said, there is the issue of the policies. On the other hand, are the players, the executors of those policies. That and a number of other issues we'll take on when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Dr. Ayorinde, let me ask you this. I mean, having been in the National Assembly and that report and all that you did, there are those who wonder, hey, there's so much concentration of economic policies, economic authority, revenue of the federal government on the federal government. So much of all we need to do is concentrated on the federal government, what the federal government has to do, can do, cannot do, and all. Wondering then, how significant is the role of state governors in the National Economic Council when indeed most of the powers concerning the economy rests with the federal government?
Thank you for that question. Volunteer not fit injuria. In law, we say that if you volunteer, you cannot say you are injured. You go to a boxing ring, you don't sue for assault because you are volunteered to go and fight. So the federal government has exclusive jurisdiction on so many things in the Constitution. So the burden of those exclusive jurisdiction is on the federal government. Maritime, banking, security, everything, federal government. Then when you come to revenue sharing formula, federal government take the chunk. So after the 62%, even the ecology fund, percentage 7%, still go to federal government. So you expect so much from federal government because the law, the constitution gives so much power to the federal government. The revenue sharing formula give about 2/3 of the fund to federal government. Can you imagine the 36 states sharing 25% of the national income, apart from whatever they're able to generate in their states? So where the money is, where the power is, where the constitutional power is where the expectation is, where the responsibility lies. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Well, that's significant. So would you then be suggesting or proposing some adjustments to the law, some kind of constitutional reviews? Because at the end of the day, whatever policies we come with, no matter how brilliant they are, they have to be in consonance with the Constitution. Do you think that constitutional adjustments to give more powers to the states, more authorities to the states to jumpstart economic activities in their states will help? For instance, the mineral deposits in most of the states, they can't really do much, with them without the federal government having a significant say. Do you think constitutional adjustments to the effect will help jumpstart or build the economy, especially from the states levels?
Well, you call it constitutional adjustments. There have been so much said about restructuring, going back to, practice federalism the way it should be. You are talking about that the state governments cannot do much. They cannot do anything. You cannot do anything about the sand, gravel behind your father's house. It belongs to federal government under the Minerals Act 2007. You cannot touch it. You must go and take permission from federal government before you can take the granite behind your father's house. If you do it and you are arrested, then you will know that you have committed an offense. So until you unbundle all these responsibilities, in my state, we have deposits of bitumen. The governor cannot touch it. He has to come to federal government and take permission. And they will now say, well, okay, no, it's like crude oil. It belongs to federal government. Only the federal government, perhaps when the crude oil had been exhausted, they will remember bitumen. So that we cannot import asphalt for tarring road any longer. However, the bitumen is their second largest in the world, according to those who have studied economics. But it's untouched, and the state government cannot exploit it. So the other, to answer your question, yes. If the federal government can say, okay, let me allow states to manage the resources in their state, but this percentage should be given to federal government in managing the way it is in all federal system. The way it is in all federal system where federalism is truly practiced is that each state will take economic advantage of all that is available within the state, exploit it for the betterment of its state, and on the aggregate, a little here, a little there, contribute to national well-being. And the economy of the nation will grow faster. I will agree. I will suggest. I'm strongly in support of reducing the burden of this economic, the federal government being the captain, being the pilot of moving the economy in a nation of 36 states.
Let me ask Dr. Yusuf, that's on the one hand, still talking about states. Most of the time when we talk about, private sector, we look at urban Nigeria, Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and the rest of them. But there are 36 states and quite a number of cities in this country. I don't know what your take is on what has been the bane, the challenge of micro, small, and medium enterprises in the space of employment. You've spoken about, inflation and several other figures. But one of the most significant figures here, especially as it affects people, is the unemployment figures, the poverty figures, and the rest of it. So in terms of helping to reduce these two figures that I have mentioned, how hamstrung and what are the opportunities there are for the micro, small, and medium enterprises across the country? What are the challenges that you think they are having, especially given the kind of situation we have on our hands economically, and what's the way out?
You see, my position is that we need to deal with fundamental issues. What we are talking about and what is happening to the small businesses are symptoms of wrong macroeconomic management problems. That was the point I was making. We need to deal with fundamentals. Look at how much we are spending to be importing petroleum products.
But Dr. Yusuf, if you don't mind me quickly butting in, just 1 second. As far back as I can remember, if you would recall as well, we've been having these macroeconomic issues as far back as I can remember. I remember, you would also remember, the Structural Adjustment Program. It's a federal government initiative. The first year, economic, SFEM, first year, second year, and the rest of them, down through the ages until now. It would seem as if every government has had the challenge of managing this economy at the macro level, yet we continue to have this challenge. And there are some of your colleagues in the economic space who say until we start producing, we can't really deal with these issues. So how can we deal with that if we are not a producing nation?
Ayo, if you don't fix the macroeconomic issues, you cannot produce. You can't produce. If you are spending on over $10 billion or more to be importing petroleum products, look at what is happening to energy prices. Is it not largely because we are not refining these things domestically? Look at the cost of diesel. If you are refining diesel in Nigeria, which is not rocket science, if you are producing PMS in Nigeria, will we be having this problem of subsidy? Are we going to be having this issue of aviation fuel or this issue of high cost of diesel? These are the things that are affecting production. That is the point I'm making. You need to fix the fundamentals of this economy. Otherwise, the real sector of the economy and many parts will be collapsing. So part of the fundamentals is to fix what is wrong with our not being able to produce refined petroleum products. We have been 60 years in oil and gas. What is the problem? Is it rocket science? Even the Niger Delta militants, they are refining crude at their backyard. So that is one fundamental issue. We should deal with the issue of the things that are putting pressure on our resources, things that are creating high energy prices. If energy prices are very high, you cannot produce. If you produce, you can't produce competitively. That is the problem. If you are having this kind of highly distorted foreign exchange policy, you cannot produce. Those are the issues. I mean, look at all the corruption that is taking place in the foreign environment.
So, Mr. Yusuf, I mean,
look at inflation.
Yeah, very key areas that you highlighted there. I mean, in addition to the headwinds which you also highlighted, but then one wonders, in max is 5 months, that this government has got to achieve some of these things that they want to achieve. Because you would have thought that with the way that the government spoke about the challenge we have in the power sector, you thought that they were going to address that headlong. But as we speak, the highest, I stand corrected, the highest amount of the capacity we have in generating power so far, government, I think it was, how many months ago was that? Was 7,000 megawatts. Which I'm not sure is what we have today. We do not have the capacity at the moment to transmit 10,000 megawatts. So these are key challenges. So in this 4 or 5 months, so you are of the opinion that if these areas were addressed headlong, at least there will be some remarkable improvement. Is that your case?
That is my case. If we're able to bring down energy prices today, I mean, talk to any producer. They will tell you the 2 biggest problems they are having today about production is about the high cost of energy and the crisis in the foreign exchange market. Those are the 2 major issues. The government has how many months, maybe 6 months or so, whatever I can do in the area of policy, because the president said it. There are some problems that are peculiar to us. They are internal. It doesn't take time to fix a policy. It may take some time to fix some infrastructure, but when it comes to policy, it doesn't take time. Some of the problems we are having with LCCI and all of that, they are also in a way related to policy. Policy around tariffs. There were also issues around the processes of privatization and all of that. These things got into some wrong hands who don't have the capacity to handle the projects and so on. Those issues are there. But basically, what we are dealing with are structural issues, there are institutional issues, there are also issues of capacity. There are regulatory issues. There are macroeconomic issues. Those are the things that can make this economy move forward. We need investment. If you don't fix all of these things, you can't get investment. You know?
All right, let me bring Dr. Ayorinde on this one. Pardon me, Mr. Yusuf. So the point is raised, the policy issues. It doesn't take you much to just fix those. But I wonder what to make of the president being in charge of this committee, because that could send different messages to different people. One, it may suggest that all the other persons who are there, supposed to have, who headed one team or the other, it means that he's saying by taking charge of this committee that, look, with due respect to all of you, I'm not satisfied with what it is that you have done. But then we also shouldn't forget the fact that the president is the Minister of Petroleum Resources. Till today, we still flare a considerable amount of associated gas, which is impacting us hugely. That oil sector is bleeding because you talk about the crude oil theft, which is about to cripple the economy, if not doing that already. And so he taking charge of that, if he say, which suggests the others have failed, he's still going to rely on people around him to achieve these policies because he cannot be everywhere. He can't do all this at the same time. So what should we make of him being in charge now?
We should first realize the fact that when the president took charge of this committee, it informs all Nigerians that previous committees have not achieved the macroeconomic resource desired for the nation. And that, look, even if he doesn't know everything, if he's there as president and is waiting for a committee to come and give him a report, perhaps seeing the president, the chairman of that committee alone, not even all the members of the committee, we are waiting for time. We are wasting time. And for a president that has just a few months, you say 5 months, maximum 6 months, to write his name in gold, perhaps he wants to say, why is diesel 850 naira per, why is foreign exchange like this? Why is interest rate like this? That's why I want to be in charge. I want to correct these things within 6 months.
But with due respect to him, he didn't have to be chairman of his committee to achieve that. He's the president.
In the past, it has. We don't want to go into the indices because so that it won't be as if I'm here as basically as a politician. I'm here as an academic and a lawyer.
I understand that. Yeah.
So I don't want to talk politics. But he knows what the foreign exchange was when he took over as president. And he knows the value now. He knows what crude oil was when he took over as president. All these challenges are there. And they are living barely facing him. Will he leave it like this? So if you now say, look, leave the steering, you cannot drive well. I want to drive the economy myself. Let us commend him. Let us see how far the political will be there to now face. They didn't just take two out of the elements of macro economy that Mr. Muda has identified. Okay, the foreign exchange that has, look at the parallel market, you sell, you buy at over 700. At the official rate, you have to, you know what it means. Let me also mention this. This issue of foreign exchange, which is at the nerve of manufacturing, nerve of production in the productive sector. When it is selling at a very high price, some people will be happy. Chairman, if you have $10,000 in your account and you hear that the dollar has moved on to 1,000 per dollar, God forbid, I don't know whether it will happen, you will be happy. Just say, my dollar, the one I have in my account, has appreciated. Everybody that matter, that can work on this matter, that you have a policy, the political will to influence it, are benefiting when the dollar skyrockets in the market. The Nigerians, the economy bleeds. So it takes the fear of God for those that in position that are in authority. It takes the fear of God. It takes patriotism to say, no, this cannot be okay. Even though I will personally benefit with my domiciliary account, wherever I have my dollars, I will benefit, my family will benefit. But with Nigerian economy, with the security situation, exacerbated because of the situation on ground, let us bring it down so that it will be a win-win. If tomorrow dollar is 400 naira per dollar, you still have your dollars at 400 naira per dollar. But Nigerians, the economy will have a relief. Then you have a country we call our own. So let Mr. President identify within the short space 2 things. Maybe it's going to address the interest rates of banks. Can you imagine 3 months into the hike in petroleum prices, whether PMS or crude oil, the CBN adjusted interest rate, and all borrowers got notice from their commercial banks that CBN has said we should increase interest rate. Double jeopardy. Ordinarily, I don't know whether, the Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, talked about it, that, look, the manufacturing sector, the industry, are paying high price for diesel. And that's at the same time, you want banks to adjust their interest rate. And we want the same industry to employ.
And telcos to squeeze them with a lot more tax.
So we need a political will. We need the president to be in charge for 6 months and want to see results.
You know, I think what you said just points to the fact that we've had former presidents complain about the cost of diesel, how it's impacting them. So the thing here, the lesson here is that all of those who are in power today should remember that tomorrow they will be referred to as former. And then they'll be back into the same market and they'll be hit with the realities or vagaries of the economy. So the asset may be appreciated now, but you need to look at the big picture, which will be tomorrow. And perhaps, as Mr. Yusuf did say there, that policies, if governments can just adjust some key policies, they might get results even faster than they even thought about, rather than, you know, coming through with a lot of huge, bogus strategies and goals that they want to achieve in 4, 5, 6 months. But you heard it there from the experts themselves, and we've had the honor of speaking with Dr. Bode Ayorinde, who is the Pro-Chancellor at Achievers University, Owo, in Ondo State. He's a former member of the House of Reps. He chaired the ad hoc committee on economic recession. He's a fellow, Chartered Institute of Bankers, and an associate professor of international banking and finance law, Faculty of Law, Nasarawa State University. We've also had Mr. Muda Yusuf, who is a former Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He's the CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CCPE. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, back in a moment here. Stay with us.